Today, we're going to talk about dispute resolution in Georgia. Specifically, we're going to get into appraisal, why it's hard to get into it in Georgia, and some of the bull that we have to deal with to get it there. So appraisal works like this, in case you didn't know. You, as the insured and the carrier, disagree on the amount of loss, which means you disagree on how much it costs to restore you. Either one of you can demand the appraisal process. By making the demand to go to appraisal, you basically establish that there is a disagreement and you want to take it out of their hands and have two complete third parties get together to decide what the amount of loss really is. So you hire your own competent, independent third-party appraiser. The carrier hires their own competent, independent third-party appraiser. Those two appraisers get together, and before they do anything, they select an umpire. This is the way it works in most policies. Some policies are different. Most policies work this way. Once they select the umpire that may not even get involved, then those two people evaluate the loss. They usually meet on site. They're supposed to write their own scopes of loss, see if they can come to an agreement on how much the amount of loss is. If they cannot agree and they want to get the umpire involved, and the umpire comes back in, and any two of those three people that agree can set the amount of loss. They sign off on a document called an award. And with the appraisal award, whatever that amount is becomes the amount of loss. Every appraisal provision is slightly different. That is the very basic idea of it. Here's the problem. In the state of Georgia, there's been some bad case law having to do with a case called Lamb versus Allstate. And the Georgia Supreme Court decided that appraisal was not appropriate for differences of scope or coverages. This is something that isn't an issue in other states. So the carriers have taken this idea of scope and coverages to the extreme. If you've got an estimate from the carrier and you've got an estimate from the contractor, and there's one line item different between them, then the carrier is saying that no, our difference isn't in amounts of loss, our difference is scope. And that is not appraisable in the state of Georgia. And they denied the appraisal process, which is weird because the appraisal demand, using the word demand in general, basically assumes that you can force them into it. If you've got a difference of one line item of scope, but the coverage has been afforded by the carrier, then that is appraisable. Scope and amount of loss are hand-in-hand issues. You can't come to an amount of loss without setting a proper scope. If the carrier disagrees with a proper scope, how do they even come to that idea? They're adjusters. They're not contractors. Who sets the scope of loss? It really should be the expert that's actually doing the work. It has nothing to do with a carrier. They set an estimate up front, and that estimate is there until you get a contractor involved. It's going to set the amount of loss. It's going to set the scope of work. They only get to make that estimate until this person exists that can put that together. The adjuster is supposed to set coverage. So what is appraisable? Coverage A is appraisable. Dwelling. Coverage B, other structures, is appraisable. Did they provide coverage under coverage A? Then you can demand appraisal if there's a difference of amount of loss that you've come up with. However it is that you got there, difference of scope for appraisal is appropriate. The case law was bad. Getting it to appraisal sometimes takes the work of a public adjuster or an attorney that really knows how to handle that kind of thing. It's a tough issue in Georgia. There's a lot going on behind the scenes, political and otherwise. We've tried to be involved in it as much as we possibly can. I hope that you get the right person involved whenever you can, as early as possible. Let us deal with the bull.